What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 101, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name's Meowth, and today I'm only joined by one of my good friends and co-host, Roffle. Corb's feeling a little bit under the weather. I know you got some situations going on as well over there, but how you feeling tonight?
Yeah, it seems like there has been an infestation of the ultimate variety recently, where all three of us are kind of well, Corb's got the worst of it, but in somewhat similar situations where we're living with, the infectious disease or trying to dodge it in yours and my case. But that aside, a few days sleeping on an air mattress in the couch left me a little bit tired, but I am well rested today and ready to talk about some of these sweet new cards.
Yeah, well rested you're going to have to be, because we've got about 60 cards that have been revealed this week. The bulk of the expansion revealed this week. So we're going to hop right on into it. I'm not going to spend too much time on a couple of these cards, because some of them I think are very obviously not good enough for Wild, or just generally kind of not very exciting. So we'll spend the meat of the time on the good stuff. And so let's go ahead and start. We're going to be a little bit all over the place because we're using the Play Hearthstone card library, and it's a little bit all out of whack. So the class order might not make a whole lot of sense. It's because it doesn't. But we're going to be starting with Paladin here. We have a brand new 1-mana spell called Promotion. It's a 1-mana epic spell that says, give a Silverhand recruit +3/+3. So Odd Paladin probably loves this. Dude Paladin probably loves this. This is a 1-mana +3/+3 buff, that's a lot of stats for 1 mana. My concern is always just, do we have enough card slots? Does this fit into the best 30? And I'm not sure, because I really haven't done too much looking at the Dude Paladin deck list. Odd Paladin might want this, just like a better Blessing of Might, because I know they used to run that in the past. But yeah, how are you feeling about Promotion?
Yeah, I think the comparison to Blessing of Might is apt. It's if Blessing of Might was run in the past, this has definitely got some potential for it. I have the same concern for you with like a just non-odd Dude Paladin, because of like you're running out. It's low on card slots, in part because we've seen some pretty good cards included in this expansion. The other concern that I have about it is the awkwardness of fitting it in. I think that the best place for this is turn 2 after you hit a 1-drop, but your 1-drop isn't really going to be you don't have a Silverhand recruit that you can just play from hand, and that's when it's going to get the most benefit in terms of trading over like the opponent's minion and really solidifying your board state. So the timing of it is the other concern, not just like the whether it has a card slot. So the timing of it is a little bit alleviated in Odd Paladin, for instance, because you are leaving mana open a lot of times anyway. So you're just like, okay, sure, I'll fill this in and give it a buff. But those are my two kind of concerns for it. But I think it's likely a pretty high quality card if Dude Paladin starts taking off again.
Yeah, I think another big downside, I think, comparing it to Blessing of Might is Blessing of Might was used to help trade up with dudes, which not really super useful right now or relevant right now. And it was also used on stuff like Leroy as just like a way to finish the game, and you can't really do that with this card, right? You can't buff a Leroy +3/+3. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a lot of experimenting with the Dude Paladin, with a lot of the new cards, including Promotion, just to kind of figure out what are the 30 playable cards and what's not. But I definitely think like Theory Crafting Stream, definitely gonna be trying out some Promotion. All right, and we have one last new Paladin card here called Mukborn Servant. This is a 3-mana 2/4 with Taunt, Battlecry, Discover a Paladin card. I feel like we don't have to spend too much time on this. We've seen this. We know that this effect's not very good in Wild. Not super exciting. Poor Mukborn Servant looks like an arena card.
I know. I want to like this card. Like the one saving grace that and the copium that I have for it is that it does help with Light Ray, which again is always a card to keep an eye on. But like we talk about this all the time. Deep card pools in Wild mean that cards like this are less good. I could see this very well being a pretty strong card in Standard, just because you have fewer total Paladin cards. Especially come next rotation cycle, when you have even fewer cards, you can really narrow in on specific Paladin cards when you only have 4 expansions in the cycle. But in Wild, not so much.
Yeah, Standard, I could totally see this like being very consistently Discover a Light Ray, Discover an Elite Snub sort of thing. But in Wild, I don't think it's going to be anything similar to that. There's a lot of bad Paladin cards in Wild. Lots of trash little 1-mana spells. So not really a super exciting card for us. Speaking of exciting, though, we're moving into Rogue. Rogue getting some pretty sweet support here, I think, actually. Let's start with the legendary Necro Lord Draca. This is a 4-mana 3/4 legendary. Battlecry. Equip a 1/3 dagger. It gets +1 attack for each other card you've played this turn. So this is kind of another Edwin-style payoff for that Miracle Rogue. Basically, instead of getting a 3-mana 12/12 Edwin, you get a 3-mana 6/3 dagger, or 4-mana 6/3 dagger, or even more, right? Depending on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going big. I'm going for 12 at least, because I'm playing this. We talked about this last week when Corb was here in the Sunstone Graveyard. And I mentioned the Sonya Knoll interaction.
Oh, true. Yeah.
If your opponent has a board, they just kind of die to this sometimes. So this is just this slots in perfectly. I was already really excited about that deck and that archetype going into the expansion. And this is a more legitimate win condition because, it's 3 attacks at, potentially 10 plus attack that you just get the benefit of it from one turn, and it, carries over for multiple turns. This adds a whole lot of lethality if the opponent is somehow able to clear your stealth minion. But this, when paired with the stealth minion, gives you a little bit of redundancy, doesn't necessarily break the consistency of Sonya Knoll, because Sunstone Graveyard is not a minion. Necrolord Draca is, but that's one card because she's legendary. So, I mean, that deck's looking like it might be legitimate. And it does, the one downside is that it does require the opponent to have some sort of board, but aside from a few decks, that's not that uncommon, because most decks at least play something in the early game, and you don't really need a lot to get these to start taken off pretty absurdly. So I'm into it.
There was a rogue list about a year ago that got pretty popular at High Legend. I think pioneered by somebody named OTZ. And so it was very much a Miracle Rogue style deck, right? With the Octobot and the Field Contact and doing some shenanigans with Shadow Step and Edwin and Smite and stuff like that. And so I could also just see, you have the Sonya Knoll interaction, but I also wonder if just a pure old Miracle Rogue, tempo Miracle Rogue, could make a comeback where you're consistently on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, making these huge bodies that the opponent has to deal with. And if they don't deal with it, you're hitting them for a lot of damage. So, I mean, Miracle Rogue, I know it's a fan favorite archetype. It looks like it's getting a lot of sweet support this expansion. And in Wild, we have all those 0-cost spells as well that Standard doesn't. And so I'm excited to see what we can do with that. And one of those support pieces is actually a brand new 2-mana spell here, Serrated Bone Spike. 2 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. If it dies, your next card this turn cost 2 less. So very similar to Lunar Eclipse in Druid, but it is not limited to just your spells. It can be any card, cost 2 less, and because it's a spell itself, you can do stuff like prep it out. So it does look like it goes in that Miracle Rogue style shell. Pretty sweet in that deck. The minion does have to die, so it kind of feels like it could be limited in certain matchups, which is never really what you want out of your cards, especially in a Miracle Rogue deck where you can't really afford a lot of dead cards. But card itself does seem pretty sweet. It does seem like it has some potential to be kind of busted. How are you feeling about it?
I mean, you always have to keep an eye on cost reduction, right? Mm-hmm. Just in any format, but especially in Wild, because things can get out of control. And like you were talking about, that tempo-y Miracle Rogue was very close for a very long time. And the one thing that maybe would be preventing Necrolord Draca from being a really easy inclusion is that the loss of Octobot makes it hard to get those really strong pop-off turns because you don't have the cost reduction. This maybe alleviates some of those issues because it does give you some cost reduction. It's not an honorable kill, so it's a little bit easier to pull off than something like a Tooth. But unlike Tooth, it doesn't go face, so there's a little bit of give and take there. I think it's probably competing for a pretty similar slot in decks to Tooth, and it's I don't know if it's going to be better or not. It also just kind of lines up nicely into Sunstone Graveyard. You can, prep, play this, hit a Sin Stone, and actually develop a reasonable amount of tempo just as a result of that on the same turn. So like, you don't have to get those Omega high rolls to really make these cards do something. So yeah, it seems like it might have a bit of potential.
Yeah, so just like the Dude Paladin in Paladin, this Miracle Rogue deck is not really a deck that's existed for a little bit here, so it's not really super easy to understand kind of how they're going to fit, how the pieces are going to fit, and whether they're going to be playable or not until we actually get to play with the cards themselves. And it also looks like we have a bunch of Rogue cards still left to see, so excited to see what other tools that archetype gets. But what we have seen so far with Door of Shadows, Graveyard, this card, even the Legendary, has me pretty excited about it. So excited to see what else we get. And last but not least, Rogue fans are super happy with the cards that we've gotten so far. I know you're a Secret Rogue fan. So how are you feeling about Ghastly Gravedigger? This is a 3-mana 4/3 battle cry. If you control a secret, choose a card in your opponent's hand to shuffle into their deck. So what is the Demon Hunter Legendary? Star Seeker Stelina, something like that.
Star Student Stelina.
Star Student Stelina. I don't know the name. I never see it except off of Illidari Studies.
Yeah, and you pick it every time.
Yeah.
Like I do.
But it's that style of effect if you control a secret. Some hand disruption, something that we always, are kind of excited for, looking for in Wild. This time it's in Rogue, specifically in a Secret Synergy class.
Yeah, like you said, I like Secret Rogue. I was a big proponent of it for a while. And in part, that was mostly reliant on the Sonya Null interaction when I had played it previously. But like, Hanar's fun. This just gives me a whole new direction to take that, because I am a former mono black scumbag in Magic the Gathering. So there's nothing I love more than discarding my opponent's hand and gaining hand advantage that way. So yeah, like I cannot wait for this card. I cannot wait for Secret Rogue. I want to shadow step this. I want to bounce this as many times as I can and really make my opponent miserable, because this is the closest we have to discard in Hearthstone. And well, at least thus far, this is about as close as we've had to discard in Hearthstone. So I'm going to play as much of it as possible. And I don't necessarily know how strong this is. It's a very good combo disruptor, but like combo decks in Wild tend to hold a lot of cards. So like the success rate isn't necessarily going to be super high all the time. It is, a little conditional. So you do have to have a secret in play, but like, if you're running this card, you're playing Secret Rogue, which means you're likely to have secrets in play at some point. And unlike Star Student Stelina, you're not actually losing that much tempo. Like, this is a fairly static card for its cost. 3-mana 4/3s have historically been pretty bad because they're fragile and they like trade down. But I think the -1 card in your opponent's hand is probably worth that. Like, because you're playing it just to get the effect, right? Mm-hmm. So you're paying 3 mana to discard an opponent's card, and like, if it trades with the 2-drop, so be it. Like, that just essentially in that case you spent 1 mana to discard an opponent's card. Like, that's absolutely worth. You run the possibility of being able to, like, it's a rogue, so you can shadow step, bounce it, and do it multiple times, and really get disruptive with your opponent's hand. Yeah. I'm curious, because it doesn't specifically say discover. Do you get to look at every single card in their hand and pick one?
I would be very surprised if that was the case. I think it's probably a discover effect.
That's what I assumed too, but then I reread the card. But yeah, it's probably just because the text box is getting a little lengthy, so you're not going to be able to squeeze in that discover keyword. Yeah. Although discover isn't that much lengthier than choose. So
hey, maybe. I would be very surprised if it worked. Like, you get to see every card in your opponent's hand, and if it did, that makes this card infinitely better.
I don't know about infinitely. Historically, Hearthstone players have been really bad about overestimating the information they get from seeing their opponent's hand. Like,
well, not really the information, but like, you're guaranteed to hit the combo piece, because you were just mentioning like large amount of cards in hand. Maybe there's a whiff rate, but if you get to see everything, then there's no whiff rate, right? Which makes it a lot better and more consistent. But just in general, Secret Support and Rogue seems like you've got some really powerful pieces. Between this, Mad Scientist, obviously, you have Stunner, the 1/2 freezing trap on a minion is really
good. Recently unnerfed too.
Yeah, recently unnerfed. You have the what is it called? Sparkjoy Cheat. the 3/3 that
Hmm.
puts a secret into play and draws you a card. So you've got some pretty strong secret rogue synergy. And so whether you're shoving this as like a package into something like Reno Rogue, or you're playing like a Tempo Rogue, with maybe some of the new cards, I don't know. I don't know where the secret package fits best, but I think the secret passage is actually pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Like you have Hanar in there as well.
And they're not going to release this card without releasing more rogue secrets because Standard doesn't have any right now. So
Oh,
there's going to be some new secrets that maybe are better than some of the ones that we've had in the past, because that's been one of the sort of limiting factors, is that Rogue has had some pretty poor secrets, save for a couple. So it's like you're really kind of making a sacrifice just in putting those cards into your deck, and this can, maybe change that.
oh, you got me more excited. I didn't realize there weren't any secrets in Standard. So,
I
well,
could be mistaken, but unless they release some into the core set, which would surprise me, without any additional like rogue secret support, I think
mhm,
either way, I think that they have to release secrets with this card,
at
otherwise what's
least
the point?
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Starting off strong here with the Paladin and the Rogue cards. Let's go to Mage. Let's talk about a very iffy card. I put out a tweet about this one because I wasn't actually sure how to evaluate this. But let's talk about Solid Alibi. It's a 2-mana frost spell. Until your next turn, your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. So, the card is Animated Armor. This was the 4-mana 4/4. You can only take 1 damage at a time. The issue with that card was always, okay, they don't care. They just kill the Animated Armor and then kill you. Um, and so the idea behind this is it's a very baby bad ice block, right? But it is a very powerful stall tool potentially in the right matchup. So, for example, because this says until your next turn, I'm sure this is going to be extremely silly in like a Quest Mage mirror. Um, because normally, if it's just an ice block, it doesn't matter because they pop your ice block and then kill you on their next of their 17 turns. But um, I don't know. This card's interesting to me. The only reason I bring it up in something like Quest Mage, I know Quest Mage can make a million ice blocks anyways between like Savara, and you get the Ancient Mysteries to tutor out the ice block. I just know like stuff like Pillager Rogue, right, and even Mind Rogue. They were running 2 evasions, 2 Cloak of Shadows for those effects. And I don't know if you have the card spots in Quest Mage, but this very much feels like potentially ice blocks number 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, of Savara and stuff like that, making it really really hard for this Quest Mage deck to take damage.
Yeah, I'm personally a little bit skeptical about this card, for a few reasons, but I think it's one that we'll find out very quickly. This is definitely one that's going to need some testing, right? Because um, I don't know. On superficially, yeah, it looks like maybe just an ice block light, right? The concern that I have for it is, um, Mage is really Quest Mage right now is really susceptible to like wide board states, not necessarily big chunks of damage. Like it can stall out with big chunks of damage because it has like Ray of Frost and those type of freeze effects. But like against wide boards, this doesn't really do a whole lot, and it almost seems like Frost Nova would be better into that type of board state.
Yep.
Like, it's maybe cutting down the amount of damage that you're taking from a swordfish, say, but like then the rest of the board is just going to like whittle away at you, and you're in a pretty bad spot anyway. And you just spent 2 mana not progressing your own game plan. The other concern that I have for it is that like if it comes after ice blocks, it's not very effective
Yeah.
in keeping you alive. So like rogue, but at the same time, rogue does run into a similar issue with say an evasion coming after a cloak of shadows, and yet it still runs both of those. So like I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. I think it's definitely worse than an ice block in almost every single case. But it definitely has the potential to give like Quest Mage an extra turn, which, as we know, can cause a lot of problems. So it's without a doubt, it's going to be something that's going to be infuriating if it gets generated against you. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's necessarily an auto include main deck, but we'll find out very quickly, I think, whether or not it is, and whether or not it's actually helping the deck. Like, it's probably going to cause a huge uptick in in Quest Mage initially because people are going to try it. People are also going to play Quest Mage to abuse all of the greedy nonsense that everybody does at the beginning of an expansion, so it's going to look a little bit better early on. Once people start going back to aggro, both the deck and this card, I could see falling out of favor a little bit. But I don't know. I've certainly been wrong before when evaluating this type of card.
Yeah, my instinct is the same, where I don't think it's going to be good enough in the 30 card list of Quest Mage. I mean, we do have Renethal now, right? So, like, in a 40 card list, maybe this does make the cut.
Do you want Renethal though? That forces you to.
That's its own question, right?
Like
people are showing Renethal in decks that they probably shouldn't be anyways. But
I've won multiple games against Quest Mage at 30 cards simply because they didn't draw enough birds soon enough. I can't imagine trying to find the birds in a 40 card deck. But again, maybe you can add more card draw. Maybe you can do something to make up for that. A little bit of redundancy in Cold Light Oracles plus multicasters to really get yourself there. So yeah, it's something definitely worth keeping an eye on. But I'm not. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with this is how bad it is after an ice block.
Yeah.
Because it just if your block's popped and it's popped at 1, which isn't terribly challenging for a lot of the decks that beat Quest Mage to do, you're just dead. And so, even against a Pillager, if they can manipulate their hand and time their damage in a way that pops you at maybe 4 or 2, and then this doesn't really even hold up to the board that's now behind it. So that's my biggest concern with him.
Yeah. All right. Playtesting. I'm just scared that if it does end up being good, I'm always just scared of Quest Mage becoming better and more consistent. But I'm not sure that this card does that. It is a little bit spooky when they do print a card like this. All right. Last mage card, we've got Suspicious Alchemist. This is a 1-mana 1/3 battlecry. Discover a spell. If your opponent guesses your choice, they get a copy. So very similar to the Priest card that we've seen before. The Priest card discovered a legendary. This discovers a mage spell. If your opponent guesses the copy or guesses the choice correctly, they get a copy as well. So all the conversations we had about the Priest minion kind of apply here as well, except it's a mage spell instead of a legendary minion. I just don't, even in Quest Mage, I don't really know if you want this, just because coin's much better than random spells. I maybe in the 40 card, but we're stretching already with wanting to shove Renethal in this deck.
And it's also got the Mukborn Servant issue where there are a lot of expensive mage spells in Wild that said you just want to avoid this thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't think Quest Mage has a issue completing their quest at this point.
No, if this card were good, you would run Babbling Book, just because you're not giving your opponent an opportunity to draw a card at the same time, right? So, there's no, Babbling Book would already be an inclusion if this would be.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into to Warrior here. Warrior's only got one new card to talk about, and that is Burden of Pride. So this is a 4-mana spell. Summon 3 1/3 jailers with taunt. So at the baseline, it is a 4-mana 3/9 with taunt over 3 bodies. If you have 20 or less health, give them +1/+1. So then you are summoning 3 2/4s with taunt. So what is that? 6/12 in taunts for 4 mana. That's pretty damn good. And it scales insanely well with cards like Bolster, right? And so when I saw this card, I think about stuff like Big Warrior, right? That can't run any minions in the early game, and so as a way to generate bodies, and then also this seems really damn good in something like Taunt or Bolster Warrior. So while not buffing or being, I think, good enough for general warrior archetypes, I do feel like this is a pretty powerful tool for those 2 niche archetypes themselves.
Yeah, I think just reading the cards, the text on the cards, strong card, right? Independently strong card. It's a matter of whether it can find a home. I think it replaces the whatever that previous kind of similar thing is that some of the 2/4s with taunts. If you didn't have minions in a big warrior, because you're kind of taking a beating in the first few turns of that big warrior anyway. And I had the same thought as you with it's just so good into Bolster. Which I know is a meme, but I think that there is a hand buff taunt warrior that is legitimately very close if you just cut the quest and just run on Glory Chaser to the fronts and legitimately bolsters as your like board solidification and like win condition, because like that just seals the game against aggro and provides legitimate threats against like slower decks. And I like the past few times I've made like a legitimate taunt warrior deck, I close out more games with bolster than I do with the hero power. A lot of times the hero power doesn't even become like at all relevant. So I could see a deck being there that's like actually very close. So this provides support to that. I don't think it'll be like super competitive, but like, it's a fun niche deck to play around with. So I'm going to.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into to Demon Hunter here. So the last time that we recorded a podcast, we talked about the location here for Demon Hunter, Relic Vault. This was a 3-mana, 2 durability location that said the next relic you play this turn, cast twice. And we had no idea what the relics were, but now we do. So they are 3 different types of spells here. You've got Relic of Extinction, Relic of Dimensions, and Relic of Phantasms. And so basically the Relic Vault will cast these things twice. And the way that these relics work is each time you cast a relic, it will improve future relics, buffing them, making their effects stronger. And so the first one here, we have Relic of Phantasms. This is a 3-mana spell that says summon 2 1/1 spirits, improve your future relics. And so I believe it buffs the stats on the card itself. So you will be summoning 2/2, 3/3, 4/4 spirits as you improve them. Then you have Relic of Dimensions. This is a 5-mana relic that says draw 2 cards, reduce their cost by 1, improve your future relics. And so I believe as you improve them, you'll be increasing the cost reduction on the card is what I believe will be getting improved. And then last but not least, you have Relic of Extinction. Relic of Extinction is a 2-mana relic that says deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion twice. Improve your future relics, and so that's improving the amount of damage dealt to those random minions. So, I mean, just kind of big picture. We've got these 3 relics. We've got the Relic Vault. When you cast the relic twice, it's going to improve twice. And so, kind of just in general, how you feeling about this little set theme for Demon Hunter here, the relics?
The powerhouse to me seems to be the Relic of Dimensions, which is kind of like almost an unnerfed Skull of Gul'dan. You get fewer cards, but you could get more cost reduction. So it's probably like somewhere in between in terms of where it lands. And like the fact that you're able to double these up with the vault means that you're doubling up, like you're dramatically improving the relics in the future as well. So like that interaction is kind of cute with the doubling of the improvement as well. So I guess my concern is the payoff big enough for them, and is there a home for these, which is always a little bit awkward in Demon Hunter, because like it just doesn't have the same depth of cards or breadth of cards that other classes do. So it doesn't have like the core like strong support cards to prop up an archetype like this that is just single expansion in the relics, because it's not very likely we get more relics in the future unless they decide to revisit this. So is there like a foundation we can lay within Demon Hunter that can support this? And probably not. Like my initial thought is maybe a token Demon Hunter. We're seeing some support with that. Spoiler, but the legendary that's associated with these relics has infused associated with it. So like you want things to die. You can cost reduce your way into a Nethrodamus or into a Sire Denathrius with the Relic of Dimensions. So like you want to think about those big bombs that you're going to hit off of the card draw and cost reduction. So maybe, but like that's not a strong foundation that you're setting. So like the relics themselves are going to have to do a lot of carrying, and I just don't see these cards as like capable of carrying an archetype.
Yeah, like the Relic of Dimensions seems like you mentioned, the busted one. The reason that you want to play relics is because of Relic of Dimensions, but then I want to run 2 of these, right? So that kind of already eliminates like Reno Demon Hunter, and then like I don't know any Demon Hunter list that like can get away with running 2 relics of Extinction, 2 relics of Phantasms, and 2 relic vaults in order to enable the Relic of Dimensions when they could just run Skull. Which is kind of the sad thing. It's always a little bit sad to see sort of these, I don't know if parasitic is the right word, kind of themes when it comes to a class for an expansion, similar to like stuff like Curses and Soul Fragments, because just like you mentioned, in Wild, you're not going to have that support, right? We talked about this with Skeleton Mage as well. It makes it really, really hard for them to be competitive, and I kind of seen the same thing with these relics, unfortunately.
Yeah, so they're, yeah, I think Parasitic is appropriate just because they take up so many card slots, and then they just end up being fleeting ethereal. Like you have them for an expansion, and then they just kind of die in our format after that. So, but like they're not necessarily printed for our format. But I think it's extra unfortunate when Demon Hunter gets these for the Wild format, because then that like keeps it further from, again, getting that foundational set of cards that it can just like add to a deck and, help carry it. Like Warlock definitely has that. And that's, 8 years of established cards. Like, most classes in the format have that. Priest has that to a degree with like Palm Reading, Insight, those types of cards, even Penance. And, there are a lot of core pieces that just like help archetypes like that survive. And I don't think that curses were what made Warlock strong. Warlock cards that have existed for a long time are what made Curse Lock even remotely playable, and I just don't see that happening in Demon Hunter for a while.
Yeah. A little bit unfortunate, like you mentioned, especially when it comes to a class like Demon Hunter. Let's wrap up our conversation about relics with the legendary minion. You've kind of already alluded to it, but it's Artificer Zymox, 8 mana, 8/8 legendary, Battlecry, discover and cast a relic. So you'll be discovering like an upgraded version of the relic. Potentially if you've hopefully cast other relics beforehand. And it has Infuse 5. So if 5 friendly minions have died while this is in your hand, it'll upgrade and cast all 3 relics instead. So it'll be clearing the board, drawing some cards, making some spirits. It's a powerful payoff, but it's just you're having to play the relics, and all the things that we just talked about kind of contribute to that. I would have loved to see like 1 or 2 of these be fell spells. I know Jace is in standard, so that it would have been a little bit busted. But I think 1 or 2 of them being fell spells would have made it playable, I think, in Wild, or at least worth considering. But alas, they're not. And so relics in general, I think, are not going to be strong enough in the format. But that's what we got the playtesting stream for, right? We're going to figure it out and see, just to make sure. That being said, Demon Hunter does have some pretty sweet cards that have been revealed that I do think are Wild playable. Let's start with a weapon. Let's start with Magnifying Glaive. 3 mana, 2/2 weapon. After your hero attacks, draw until you have 3 cards. So the very obvious home for this is that 1-drop Demon Hunter, the 1-drop odd Demon Hunter in Wild. And this is like what has historically been kind of the closest Demon Hunter has had to a kind of successful archetype post all of those nerfs when Demon Hunter originally came out. And this is a card draw card that you actually want to play in that deck, because Acrobatics has never been great, Need for Greed's never been great. This card, pretty great. You get to swing with it, you immediately draw the cards, and you don't have to wait until your next turn to play them like you do with something like Voracious Reader. So I think this card's very, very strong in that specific deck. And I also think it's just probably strong enough for just aggressive Demon Hunter decks in general in the format. It's a very, very, very strong card. Card draw good, yeah, especially in an aggro deck.
Yeah, I think that this is probably the highest quality card that we've seen from Demon Hunter thus far. And I think that, I don't know, I guess my concern is, like, is it better than the 3 mana weapon that Odd Demon Hunter is already using? I don't know. Like, that's a tough call. I did have a fair amount of success, though, with 40 card Odd Demon Hunter recently. I actually hit Legend with it on a pretty nutty run, not dropping a game for quite a bit. So I think that there's something to that, just because, like, a lot of times with Demon Hunter, you have to give up the board and just start saying, okay, well, the opponent has the board, I'm going to just push everything face. And that won me a handful of games against, like, Pirate Rogue, against Murloc Shaman, where I'm just like, okay, board's yours. The clock's ticking, though, because like I've got this 10 extra health. My cards don't matter because I'm just relying on this hero power anyway. But anyway, all of that is to say that like that could justify running. If you're running 40 cards, that could maybe justify running a 5th and 6th weapon because you're probably always running the Dread Prison Glaive or whatever the honorable kill one it is. You're probably wanting to run. I'm drawing a blank, but the Outcast 3-mana one that was recently buffed. You probably want to run. Yeah, Dreadlord's Bite. Thank you. And you probably want to run this in that deck too. And so that gives you, some flexibility and without the awkwardness of, having just a handful of weapons. It's still going to happen, but like with 40 cards, it happens less often, and you're still running a high density of 1-drops. But I think it also just makes sense in a straight aggro Demon Hunter as well. I think QB hit like rank 3 recently with a deck that would probably take an eye on this. It was running like Glide, 1 Skull, which, has its own problems. But I think that I don't know that like an aggro Demon Hunter wants to run Glide. So this is escaping that because spending 4 mana on just drawing cards is not ideal. This spends 3 mana on drawing almost the same number of cards in some situations while still going to get going face, which is important. And like you don't have to swing at the first turn too, right? So you can set it, not swing, dump your hand, and then swing on turn 4, and really control the card draw associated with it. So yeah, I think maybe it's being a little bit overrated because we've seen this effect before and it hasn't been terribly strong, but like it's not on a minion, so you get to it. That's good for 2 reasons. You get to attack immediately without like it getting removed, and you get to attack twice with it. So it's like it's guaranteed 2 attacks, and I think it's like better than Genzo the Shark. And Genzo was like a fringe playable card at different points, so I think that this has potential to be there as well.
Yeah, I think the obvious comparison is Voracious Reader, right? And I think it's just much better than that because you immediately get the card draw, like I mentioned. I know we have a lot of other cards to talk about, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it, but I think just generally very high quality card, and we'll be seeing a lot of play in aggressive Demon Hunter archetypes. All right, let's talk about the other legendary here. Let's talk about Crixus the Voracious. 4 mana 7/7 is back. Okay, this time is as a Demon Hunter card. Pretty unique card here. Battle Cry, discard your hand. Death Rattle, draw 3 cards. It is 4 mana 7/7. So generally in aggressive archetypes, I know that thing says discard your hand. Normally in aggressive Demon Hunter archetypes, that's not going to matter because you're not going to have very many cards in hand anyways. And so that Battle Cry, not really a tremendous, downside. Death Rattle, huge upside. Get to draw 3 cards. And if you really want to be cheeky, you can run like an aggressive Death Rattle Demon Hunter and run the Quillbore, the 3 mana 3/3 that says Death Rattle. Put a Death Rattle minion that costs 4 or less from your hand onto the battlefield, and so that'll bypass that whole Battle Cry thing for you as well, and you still get the pretty insane Death Rattle. I mean, I think the card is very high quality for aggressive strategies in Demon Hunter, and between this and the weapon and the fact that it's already kind of fringe playable, has me feeling a little bit of copium that aggressive Demon Hunter might be a real deck in Wild.
I think I would agree with you if it weren't for the prevalence of Smothering Starfish and the Priest Silence, because Big Priest is really starting to come to prominence because people are catching on that it's good. I don't know. Even if you just assume that you're playing it from hand, not doing anything super cheeky, like it does. I think it's an interesting card in that it puts the opponent in like an awkward situation where like if they don't have the silence, do I just continue taking 7 or do I clear this? And that's like, I don't know. It creates interesting decision points. My concern is just like big beefy death rattles like this historically have kind of underperformed just because of like the simplicity of just having them be silent. So you would feel really bad if you discard like even just a couple cards and you don't get the death rattle to go off. I think in most cases, even with the Magnifying Glaive as like a sort of pseudo synergy with this in terms of how it operates. But it's also entirely possible that I'm just wrong, and it doesn't matter if you draw the cards or not because you have a 4 mana 7/7. But like, when was the last time a 4 mana 7/7 was playable in our format? Is I guess um, the counter to that. So big stats typically haven't mattered for a while, but if you're already chipping away at your opponent to where they're at like 15 health on turn 4, that might matter. Like, so I think that there's potential. It's a hard card to evaluate. It's going to depend a little bit on how much silence remains in the format once the expansion comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit higher on this than I ever was on the 4 mana 7/7 in Shaman because it doesn't have the overload, and you're in a class that already wants to dump, right? Rather than trying to get value out of your hero power like you do in Shaman and do some synergies there. So,
I mean, counter argument to that, like you get some synergies from overload and shaman in an aggro deck. Overloading mana crystals is almost the same as just discarding cards because that's fewer cards that you can play on the following turn regardless. So I don't know that it's that much different than like a Flame Wraith Faceless, which, like, I mean, even in a Tunnel Trog aggro deck hasn't been popping up for a very long time. So
that's fair.
That's my hesitation with it.
Yeah, I mean, but that 4 mana 7/7 doesn't draw you 3 cards if they don't silence it. So that's the hopium. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just overrating it as the new shiny thing that I want to play with in a class that doesn't really have a lot of playable things. So that's totally potentially a fair assessment. But just in kind of general, I'm pretty hopeful for the aggro Demon Hunter decks. And another card that might fit in those, maybe not, is Bibliomite. Speaking of just a pile of stats, this is a 2 mana 4/4 Millhouse Mana Storm stats, baby. But it does have the battle cry of choosing a card in your hand to shuffle into your deck. And so you are losing a card in your hand. This is not a benefit of putting patches back into your deck. That's not what this is. You are losing a resource. But you are getting a pretty big pile of stats. This is a 2 mana 4/4. I mean, this, like we're talking about this in the aggressive Demon Hunter list. It's probably fitting in the same decks as Crixus and Magnifying Glaive. This is probably the one that's the most cuttable, because that battle cry, if you're playing this on 2, does kind of feel like it might be a little bit sketch. But maybe I am just overestimating that, and it's fine.
I guess the question is, would you, in that deck, would you intentionally run give a 1 mana card that's give a minion +1 plus, or 0 mana card that's essentially give a minion +2/+1? Maybe. Like, I think you might consider it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what this does, right? Like, you lose a card from hand in order to buff its stats. I think it has the fringe benefit of making your Magnifying Glass better and your Crixus better. So, like, maybe there's a place for it. 4 stats is hard to like. 4 is an important breakpoint in Wild. Like, that's hard to remove. There's no direct removal for this from control decks that can just remove this. Couple that with your hero power to, like, knock off tour guides or that type of minion. So, like, how does a Warlock deal with this? I think there's a legitimate case that could be made for this card, and like I said, it makes the other 2 cards better. So maybe it moves the needle a little bit on Crixus, and like Magnifying Glass, we've already kind of established is probably a pretty good card. So maybe
indeed. All right, let's move into Hunter here. Let's start with Stonebound Gargon. 4 mana 3/5 beast with rush, infuse 3, also damages the minion next to whomever this attacks. So it's a 4 mana 3/5 with rush. If you have 3 minions die, it gains cleave. So the obvious home for this is in, like, the Beast Hunter, the Copper Hunter, probably. So this is probably competing in slots with what's it called? The Coil Fang, the 5/4 that stops your opponent from playing a card. Just because in general you don't really want a ton of expensive beast, and I don't really know how much of an upside cleave really is in our format nowadays, because there's very few decks that actually play for the board. consistently. So not super sold on Gargan itself.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just cost prohibitive. And
Mhm.
like you said, like you're I don't know, I always feel like I'm pretty good into Pirate Rogue as just the Copper Hunter to begin with. So like I don't need another card that's good into that matchup at the expense of others.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the legendary here. We've got Huntsman Altimore, 7 mana, 5/4. Summon a Gargan companion. So Gargan companions, they are just fancy animal companions. You've got a Huffer named Margor. You've got Misha named Hecatus, and you've got Leok with Bear Gas. So basically, they're just animal companions. So at baseline, this card's actually pretty trash. It's a 7 mana 5/4 summon a random animal companion. However, if you infuse 4, this summons 2 animal companions. If you infuse 8, you summon all 3. That is a lot. That's asking a lot because it has to be in your hand for the infuse to take place. And I don't think it's actually a playable card until you have infuse 8. Like at the other 2 levels, it is not very good. And with a super conditional card like that, it's a 7 mana card. It's not a beast itself. I just don't see any world where this is wild playable.
No, even in like a Reno Hunter, like you want Dino Tamer Brand to be your top end a lot of the time, just so that like you can pull Celt into him and then win the game. And this does not do that. So yeah, no, it's a bummer to see this on a legendary card. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll probably play it. Like it's cute if you infuse it all the way and then brand it. Then you get like, I don't know.
You don't
You
even have
probably
board space for all the animal companions then.
you run it. Well, you summon 5.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, at that point, just play Call of the Wild and Zul'jin.
I was gonna say, yeah, we just already have Call of the Wild, and it requires a lot less effort. So if that's not seeing play, there's no way this is.
Yeah. Poor Hunter getting a pretty crappy legendary here, but it does have another chance. One more legendary to see here in Hunter. All right, next up we have Baddie Guest. So not a super flashy card, but I actually think a card with some potential. It's a 1 mana 1/1. Death Rattle, summon a 2/1 bat. So normally when we see this type of card, we see it summoning a 1/1. It's summoning a 2/1. Potentially, I mean, it makes it a lot better. This is sweet for those Death Rattle synergy decks that want to be more aggressive. So stuff like decks that want to run the egg. There is, believe it or not, a parrot in Hunter that cares about Death Rattles. I think this will be playable in Standard. I think right now in Wild, the synergies are just not there in Hunter to make you care about Death Rattles. So you're not super excited about this, unfortunately. But I mean, just it's a better card than something that we already have. Maybe something to keep an eye on in the future.
I think it's maybe worth looking at for like even like a Reno version of a more aggressive Hunter deck, like potentially even like Death Rattle or not. I think that it's a good 1-drop for that type of deck, just for maintaining board. Hunter struggles when it loses board a lot of the times, and this helps offset some of that. But yeah, I don't think it has much hope in the outside of that.
All right. Next up, we have Spirit Poacher. I know we're going through these a little bit fast, but Spirit Poacher is a pretty sweet card. So maybe we'll spend a little bit of time on this, at least reading the card, because it's got a lot. So this is a 2 mana 2/2 battle cry. Summon a random dormant wild seed, and so basically you're going to summon one of 3 random dormant minions. So kind of the low roll is Fox Spirit Wild Seed. So this is a 3/1 with Rush, dormant for 1 turn. So you'll summon this on 2, and then on turn 3 you have a 3/1 with Rush. Then you have Bear Spirit Wild Seed, which is a 2/5 beast, dormant for 2 turns, and it has Taunt. So you play Spirit Poacher on 2, and then on turn 4 you get a 2/5 beast with Taunt. Or you can summon the Stag Spirit Wild Seed, which is a 5/4 beast, dormant for 3 turns. When this awakens, equip a 4/2 Great Bow, which is just a 4/2 weapon. And so Poacher on 2, turn 5 you get Stag Spirit Wild Seed. So on turn 5 you'll get this 5/4 and a 4/2 weapon. So on 2, this card seems pretty good. I think anytime after turn 2, not so great because you do have to wait for these minions. If you do hit the Stag Spirit, that's really good, right? You play this 2-drop and you get a 2/2, and then 3 turns later a 5/4 and a 4/2 weapon. Like, that's really good if you can survive and wait the 3 turns, which is kind of the big thing with this. And so I don't really know any place that it wants to see play outside of maybe like it could be cute in Reno Hunter. I could totally see that. But outside of that, as sweet of a card as this is, not really sure where else it has a home.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, is the Stag the high roll? Because that's
Maybe
3 turns
not,
is
yeah.
a long time, even after, like, on turn 5, that card, that 5/4 is dead. Like, there's nothing, or you're dead. So, yeah, I don't see this as a playable card. I honestly think that you might just be best off with the
one
Fox Spirit, just so that you can immediately remove your opponent's minion and maintain your board lead if you have it. So that, yeah, no.
Maybe. I guess it's a lot for just a 2-mana 2/2. So like it's a very minimal cost. The actual cost is the waiting of the time, right? And whether you can afford to do that, I guess, is the big question. I like the card. I don't know if it's good. I think it's super sweet though, design wise, and I'm gonna be excited to play it even if it's not very good.
I guess the question is, would you play a 2-mana version of any of the dormant minions? And I would
play
probably
a 2-mana 5/4 maybe. 2-mana
the
5/4.
dormant for 3 turns.
It gives you a 4/2 weapon. I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, when you put it like that, maybe not.
Yeah. And
right.
so if you wouldn't play that card, why would you play it on a? You certainly aren't playing it on a
random.
Well,
2/2.
maybe like the 2/2 body doesn't change that much, right?
All right, maybe not. All right, killing my hype for this card. God damn it, Roffle. Last but not least for Hunter, though, we have Frenzied Fangs. It's a 2-mana spell, summon 2/2/1 bats. So it's a 2-mana 4/2 baseline. If you infuse 3, Frenzied Fangs gets upgraded and will give the bats +1/+2. So if you infuse 3, it becomes a 2-mana summon 2/3/3 bats. So seems like a strong card in specifically like a token style hunter deck. I'm assuming the bats are beasts. Let me double check on that, but
Yeah.
yes, the thirsty bats are beast. So I guess the question is, do you think that this fits in the Copper Hunter, the Beast Hunter list?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you have a lot of minions die. You have a lot of 1-drops that create tokens, and so the infuse is pretty easy to hit. This is really good with Rhino. It's pretty good with Buzzard. Like, you're getting a lot of damage and or card draw of it. I think it's definitely worth a look. It's decent with a Hyena as well. So like, yeah, it does the things that deck already wants to do. And it's just like it passes the curve check, right? Like, it's just fine on curve if you need it to fight for board. And it, like, if you have 2 in hand, they infuse each other, or at least nearly do. So yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, I guess my only hesitation would be that it's not a beast, right? It's a spell. And so like it doesn't get discounted by Harpoon Gun, but maybe that's like it's not really that big of a downside, right? Because it seems like the upside of this card is pretty high. Yeah. All right, let's move into to Warlock here. So in Warlock, we actually haven't talked about any of these, so we got a lot of Warlock stuff to talk about. And let's start with Imp King Rafam, because with him we're going to talk about kind of the theme for Warlock this set. One of the big ones centers around imps. Imp King Rafam, just it's crazy to me. But Imp King Rafam is a pretty sweet card here. 6 mana, 6/6. Battlecry, resurrect 4 friendly imps. Infuse 5. Give your imps +2/+2. So for those of you guys that are kind of out of the loop, you might just be thinking, why do you care about 6 mana summoning 4 1/1s? Turns out there are a lot of cards, both in this set and just kind of in general in Hearthstone, that are considered imps that aren't the 1/1s. 25 cards in Wild that aren't imps. Well, kind of some notable ones. You got Jumbo Imp, obviously, but even stuff like Envoy Rustwicks, some stuff like Tiny Knight of Evil. So you've got some potential synergy there with this card. So baseline with Imp King Rafam, you're summoning. You're getting 12/12 worth of stats maybe. for 6 mana, which is not bad, right? As a pile of stats on 5 bodies. If you get to infuse, right, you're summoning whatever 12/12 plus 8 while buffing any imps that are already on the board. And so this seems like it's going very much in a like zoo-ish style deck, like your traditional zoo lock is probably where this wants to be. I know people are talking about Gallicron Warlock because you summon a bunch of imps kind of just naturally anyways in that style of deck. And you can use this as sort of like a buff. I will say we've seen buff effects like this. We have Shady Bob, right? 5 mana 4/5, which is a quartermaster for your demons. And so you can see the synergy there. My hesitation is always just, is the synergy good enough to be competitive? Because the archetype currently isn't very playable, right? When you look at something like Gallicron Warlock. But do you think Imp King Reform kind of moves the needle on that?
No. I think that um, I think the archetype might just be dead on arrival just because it requires a little bit too much buildup. Like if you're relying on a turn 6 payoff in a board-based deck like that, that tends to be a recipe for disappointment. I think that there are some interesting things that we haven't looked at yet that maybe do give me a little bit more confidence in this archetype. I just don't know that like if the deck is good, I don't know that it's Imp King Reform that's doing it. I think it's some of the support cards that have the potential to help out a bit, and even then, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of these support cards. We can just kind of evaluate them together. So let's just talk about all 4 of these. I'm going to do a lot of reading here real quick, so bear with me. So first of all, you've got Mischievous Imp. So this is a 4 mana 3/3 demon. Battlecry, summon a copy of this. So baseline it is 4 mana 6/6 across 2 bodies. However, if you infuse 3, you summon 2 copies of this instead. So it becomes a 4 mana 9/9. Notable here is that it says summon a copy. So if you play something like Scrapyard Imp, which is the dormant minion that after 2 turns buffs everything in your hand by +2/+2, you will be summoning 2 5/5s, which is relevant, right? Because there is some of that synergy there in this class. Then you have the Warlock location, which is the Vile Library. 2 mana location, 2 durability. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. Repeat for each imp you control. So obviously the wider you go, the bigger the buff that you get. And then you have Flustered Librarian. This is a 1 mana 1/3. Always important to note these cards. This 1 mana 1/3 has +1 attack for each imp you control. So very much a Mana Worm-esque card. Not as good as Mana Worm OG, but still kind of the one drop for this archetype. And then the best card, the best support piece for this, probably the reason that this deck is going to work if it does, is Impending Catastrophe. This is a 2 mana shadow spell. Draw a card. Repeat for each imp you control. So at its baseline, it is 2 mana, draw 1. In a class or in an archetype that is going to be built around flooding the board with imps, could totally see this being a 2 mana, draw 4, draw 5, which is, it's the payoff card, right? Like this is what's going to make that deck work. So a lot of support pieces here. How are we feeling? I mean, we talked about Impending Catastrophe, right? Like this is going to be the thing. I don't know. I could see maybe a Gallicron style deck that utilizes all of these and potentially is playable because it takes advantage of all of these cards themselves.
Yeah. I mean, when we did see like Gallicron Warlock playable in Wild for a little bit, where it wasn't good, but it was playable. A lot of the power was on the 4 mana 5/4 that drew cards after evoking, right? And this is just a better version of that because you're not as reliant on the invoke cards. Honestly, like you probably just only run the evoke cards that summon the imps, right? Like in that deck. And so yeah, you don't need to waste the time invoking, and instead you can just play this for also half the mana. Yeah, this card seems like if the deck is good, it's because of that. My concern, I guess, with the deck in general is that it really seems to rely on infuse mechanics for some of its payoff cards, in particular the Mischievous Imp and Rafam. And we just talked about how even though they're trying to push board-based strategies with this expansion, that's not something that really is all that prevalent in Wild. So like, how do you infuse your minions? And then like Rafam is also kind of awkward because like you need to run low cost imps or token imps in the early game in order to get the full effect of him. But then that dilutes the res pool to the point where you're not getting the full payoff. So like there's a little bit of awkwardness in some of the interactions with these. Um, but I think Impending Catastrophe is just has the potential to be so strong that like maybe maybe that's enough to carry it. We saw similar things in other formats. Like a lot of what makes Murloc Shaman so strong is its ability to refill hands with things like Gorlock Ravager after the Clownfish was reduced or introduced, or even like Underbelly Angler in the past. So like there's precedent there to a card like this could make it worthwhile. It's just hard to imagine right now that being the case, but hopefully I'm wrong, because I mean I would like to live in that world where the board matters a little bit more than it does now.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the world where we're just like not playing this in a Gallicron shell. I know that's what I keep bringing up, just because it's really easy to keep making imps, but we've also like just over the past like year we've gotten a lot of cards that just randomly create imps. So like stuff like Wicked Shipment is really
Wicked
good.
Shipment,
They have the
even,
buffed Fiendish Circle, the 3 mana
right.
summon 4/1/1 imp. So you got a bunch of cards like that. Like, hey guys, you remember this card called Implosion? I mean, that's probably not good enough nowadays, but like there's a lot of ways to make imps, and so like even if you're not in a Gallicron shell, seems really
Even
good.
just Dreadlich Tamsin creates imps.
Yeah,
Like,
there you
but I mean, she generates enough card. The problem I see with that is that those type of decks have an abundance of card draw as it stands. So like, is that the thing that's solving that deck? Probably not so much, but it's a card, like maybe it's worth a slot
go.
in spite of that.
Yeah. So, just like Dude Paladin, just like the Rogue deck, the Miracle Rogue, it's just gonna be one of those archetypes that like it's existed in the past, and it'll be interesting to see if the support pieces that are introduced this expansion are enough to push it to being like an actual. Like, it doesn't have to be a top tier deck for this to be a success. I think for something that just doesn't see play now, if it becomes a tier 3, tier 4 deck, like a deck that you can play, you can hit legend with, that's a success. Uh, you know,
I think if it's a tier 5 deck, if it's just like playable, like I would consider that a success.
yeah.
So,
All right. Now let's get to the spicy stuff. Some spicy cards here. Let's start with Tome Tampering. This is the one that's got a lot of people talking. 3 mana spell. Shuffle 1 cost copies of cards in your hand into your deck. Then discard your hand. So, if you have a Malchezaar Zimp on the board, or you have a Hand of Gul'dan in your hand, you're shuffling 1 cost copies into your deck, and then you're drawing some cards. And so hopefully you're drawing some of those 1 cost cards. So kind of the spicy thing that I've seen with this card is, Naga Giants used to, you would discount your Giants to 5, and then we could discount it to 0, because their base cost was set to 5. So now if you set the base cost of these Giants to 1, right, you are tapping into 0 mana Giants, which zero. If you've played any sort of Wild, you know that 0 mana Giants, powerful things in the format. It seems very much like a card that can break things. It seems like currently the builds that I've seen seem very inconsistent at doing the broken thing. However, if it, and we said the same thing about Switcheroo, right? Where I don't think this is going to be consistent enough to be good enough. So very easily this could be like the new broken Warlock thing. I'm sure that there's even more spicy things that you can do with this card, but this definitely seems like the spicy thing that's going to potentially break something in Wild.
yeah, I know a lot of people are already up in arms about this. I think that it definitely, like you said, very much has the potential to be that Warlock card that we've seen in the past. Like you pair it with a Malchezaar Zimp, and you're kind of offsetting the fact that you're discarding your hand, or even just like you said, the Hand of Gul'dan. The problem still remains that you do have to then draw back those cards, right? So you don't necessarily get the big board of giants the turn that you pop off. There's certainly a high possibility if you have enough giants in hand, or if you like hit the imp plus the Hand of Gul'dan, that you're able to draw enough to like get through your deck. But this card in particular is very hard to evaluate because, kind of like Sochiru, but maybe even more so, it's very much a high roll card, right? Like, you not only do you have to draw the 2-card combination in a reasonable amount of time, which, let's be honest, Warlock is pretty good at doing that, so like that's not that big of an ask. But at the time of playing it, you have to have like a handful of giants, right? You need a number of giants in hand when you play those cards together so that those giants become playable, right? Because if you don't have the giants in hand, that's not a playable combo, right? Because like then you're just shuffling a bunch of, I don't know, 1 mana nonsense into your deck. So like that's not going to win games with like 1 mana tour guides and Kobold Librarians, right? Like the timing has to be right. But it's depending on how consistent it is, it could be very much format warping and a little bit concerning. What if you also just run this plus Malgazar's Imp and Hand of Gul'dan's and just like Mecha'thun Warlock, and then you have a 1 mana Mecha'thun potentially. You turbo draw through your deck, and like, what if you? I mean, imagine playing this with with 2 imps. Like your deck is really getting churned through. If and then there's the potential that you lose the Mecha'thun at some point. But like, I don't know, that seems scary too. Like a really really early turn 6 or so Mecha'thun combo. Like, there's definitely the potential for that because you have 2 of those. You can make use of the impending catastrophe as well because you're already running the imp as a Malgazar's Imp, and you have like other shenanigans that you can do as well. So like, yeah, there's potential for this card because of the existence of Malgazar's Imp, and we'll see. I think that I know it's kind of a cop out, but like I don't see the point in getting all up in arms about this because we don't know how consistent it is going to be just yet. So I think it's better to. I mean, we'll probably find out during the theory crafting stream or shortly after the expansion is released if it's going to be, as busted as people are concerned about.
Yeah. All right. This is the card I think out of everything that we talked about. Keep an eye on. This is going to be the card that is either useless or potentially breaks the format. I feel like there's not going to be very much in between on it. All right, let's move on to Shadow Waltz here. Not a very good card, not a very exciting card. I will say, huge flavor fail that it summons a 3/5 Shadow with Taunt if another minion died this turn summon another. It's a Waltz. It should be a 3/4. Come on, huge flavor fail. 5 mana Shadow spell. Not a very good card. Shadowborn. This is a 3 mana 3/3 beast. Death Rattle. Reduce the cost of the highest cost shadow spell in your hand by 3. Hey Roffle, you know what some shadow spells are?
Void Contract.
Okay, that is also true, but I was gonna go a completely different route and say some Blood Blooms and some Darkest Hours are both shadow spells.
Yeah, you can leave now.
Okay, goodbye.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the thing that enables it. Is Blood Bloom actually a shadow spell?
I believe so. I know Darkest Hour is.
I know Darkest Hour is too, but
Blood Bloom is
Blood Bloom is shadow. Yeah, you're right. So 1 mana Blood Blooms.
Yeah. That's totally never going to be broken. That was totally nerfed to 4 mana for a reason.
It has to be in your hand is the thing, and like if you're already spending 3 mana on this, so you're essentially spending 4 mana on Blood Bloom anyway, right?
I mean, the fact that you can like play this on 3 and then like if you hit the Darkest Hour, then you're good to go. Or like if you hit the Blood Bloom, it means that starting on like turn 4, turn 5, you can go Imps plus like Fiend's Circle plus Blood Bloom early. I know I'm talking about Darkest Hour, and I know you hate the deck, and so here's to hoping it's not good, not consistent, and maybe Void Contract is the thing that we're doing. But I do think that Blood Bloom Darkest Hour is something to keep an eye on with a card like this. So yeah, I mean, mana discount on big expensive stuff, getting to play them earlier, faster, always a good thing. Maybe not a good thing. It's a powerful thing.
I think if this were on a battle cry, it would probably have a better chance of being
That's true.
playable, but because it does have to die, and you do have to like, and it doesn't like you have to have it in hand. It's not just a persistent effect. I think that's kind of both of those are going to be limiting in terms of making it a strong thing. It might be a fun thing, but
Yeah. Hopefully it's just void contracts and it doesn't bring back the second coming of Darkest Hour, because that would not be very fun. All right, Lady Darkvein. Speaking of fun, 5 mana 3/6 legendary minion. Battlecry. Summon 2/1 shades. Each shade gains a death rattle that casts your last shadow spell. So I'm not really sure what we can do with this in Wild. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not super familiar with the Shadow Spell School because it's very rarely relevant in Wild outside of like removal alongside Tamsin. But I know people in Standard are talking about how this is like absolutely busted with some of the curse spells that are all Shadow, and helps you scale really, really well in there. And so obviously that applies to Wild, but I'm not sure. Like all the Shadow spells that we know about are removal, right? Like that's what scales really well with Tamsin alongside Power Overwhelming. I don't know. You go Void Contract and then you play this and you just obliterate everybody's deck and they have nothing left. I don't really know what exactly we're abusing with this.
I mean, even with Void Contract, like the subsequent Void Contracts get worse and worse because you have fewer cards in your opponent's deck. So, I don't know. People are also concerned about this with Phylactery, but it doesn't really work that well with Phylactery. So it's like it just I don't know. I could see it maybe in a Curse Warlock. The one thing that it does do is it's okay in that situation with like a Plague of Flames, and so that's something to keep an eye on. It's a decent Defile starter as well. So like you can immediately, we have the tools in Wild to more immediately get those death rattles off. I think is something that makes it worth looking at, and it's just like kind of overstated as it stands, but we saw that in the past with a neutral version that didn't quite take off, where like the fact that it was overstated didn't make up for the way that those stats were distributed and broken up, and so it's like I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I think it's not super exciting in Wild because all the things that you can do in Wild, most of the things you can do in Wild are things that you kind of are doing in Standard, and so like branding this seems really good, and you really want to do brand stuff with curses. And things like that. But I'd be very surprised if curses kind of took off. But you know, we are Wild, we are Warlock. Warlock kind of makes everything better in Wild because we have defiles and backfires and stuff like that. So interested to see if you guys have ideas. Those of you guys that are listening, what shadow spells to abuse with Lady Darkvein? Let us know down in the comments. All right, let's move into Shaman here. Convincing Disguise. Transform a friendly minion into one that costs 2 more. Infuse 4. Transform all friendly minions instead. 1 mana spell, no nature tag, no spell school at all. So I don't know if this outclasses stuff like mutate, evolve itself, things like that. Even like unstable evolution, I think I might want over this. Just because I'm not sure how consistently that infuse trigger is going off as well in Evolve Shaman.
I mean, you're already going wide in Evolve Shaman as it is, right? So I think this has some potential to do some silly things. It's not I can see what you mean though, because it's not like the first evolve card that you want to play. You want to use it as like an answer to your opponent removing your stuff on a turn. So like yeah, it's a little bit slower and you really want to be fast with evolve, but I don't know, it still seems like inherently pretty powerful and is a good decent contingency plan. I'm gonna try it either way because like it looked like I want
New cards,
to see
right?
how it is. But +2 is a big difference, right? For 1 mana, like that's, I mean, it turns into a better evolve if you are able to infuse it. And
yeah, I mean, I think my big issue is the fact that like it's kind of way worse than all your other options until you infuse it,
right?
And then it's really good when it's infused, and like you mentioned, like you never want it to be your first evolve spell. It's not even a nature spell, so it's like it dilutes your Dungeoneer draws. I don't know. This is where we're missing Corb, right? Corb is the Evolve Shaman guy, missing his input on this one.
I think
yeah.
I think even with Corb, like it's hard to evaluate because we don't know. Like we've underestimated in the past how infuse is. That's why Corridor Creepers slip through the radar. So like we don't know how how easy it will be to get the infused effect, I guess, is the hard part, because we haven't played with infused yet. So
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's move on to the legendary here. The Stormwright, Stonewright. God, I can read. But Totem Shaman support, baby. 4 mana 5/4 battle cry. For the rest of the game, your totems have +2 attack. So, very similar to the Dude Paladin conversation that we've had, where totems have very much been an even shaman thing in the past, and really haven't experimented too much with just pure totem shaman in Wild. I feel like, obviously outside of Roffle, but I think, I mean, this card I think is very powerful, right? Just perma totemic might or totemic strength on all of your minions for the rest of the game that are totems. But if you are running just like a pure totem shell, you get to do stuff like Bran with this. You get to Bolner with this. You get to Macaw with this. And so you're permanently giving all your totems like +6 attack, which is kind of gross. And stuff like the Bran and the Macaws synergize with stuff like your weapon. So card's pretty sweet. I really do like this card for the totem style decks, whether that's even shaman, whether that's just pure totem shaman. Pretty excited about this one. What about you?
yeah, I mean, it just goes in both, right? Like it's it has a persistent 0 mana effect that on a card that you're already running for a reasonably like a fairly statted minion. Yeah, just put this card in your totem decks if you have enough totems. Even shaman already got a decent boost with amalgam last expansion, and this can help with that as well. So yeah, seems good.
All right, big fan of Stonewright. And then we have some more totems here. We've got Party Favor Totem, 3 mana 0/3 totem. At the end of your turn, summon a random basic totem. Infuse 2. So actually just 2 minions have to die. You infuse it, it upgrades, it summons 2 totems at the end of your turn. It is 3 mana. It is pretty pricey, but comes with 2 bodies guaranteed, potentially 3. It does kind of suck that it happens at the end of your turn, because then like Totemic Might, Totemic Strength get a lot worse. But if you've played something like Stonewright, then it you know, you're summoning 2 3s and 2 2s and stuff like that. I don't know if this makes the cut as like, I don't know if it's good enough in your top 30, because you already have stuff like Anchor Totem, Evil Totem, Flame Tongue Totem, all of those kind of cards like that. But it's a lot of bodies, right? Which can never really be underestimated.
Yeah, it's really good in on curve behind an anchored totem. I guess the question is it better on curve than just like a tour guide hero power? No. So, and it asks a little bit less than a totem guide or tour guide hero power. So, if it does make the cut, it's going to be like towards the back end of the cards that are like playable in this list. Like it's going to be cards maybe 29, 30 around that area. So it's possible that it's good enough, but it seems fringe playable at best, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I'm just glad that they gave, when they printed a legendary totem support piece, they printed another totem, because the last time they did that, they went a year and a half without printing another totem when they printed Eyesore. So at least we got another totem here, regardless of how good it is. All right, moving on here, wrapping up soon. We're moving into Druid, so we got a bunch of Druid cards to talk about. Starting with Natural Causes. This is a 2 mana nature spell. 2 mana, deal 2, summon a 2/2 Treant. Treant Druid loves this. I'm not sure any other Druids that really like this, though.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. It's good for Treant Druid, but Treant Druid's not very good. But maybe that could change. I don't know if this is a card that does it, though.
One of these days, all right? One of these days. Aeroponics is a card asking to be busted. One of these days it will be. All right, so we've got our 2 legendary minions here in Druid. Let's start with Topior the... this name. Topior the Shrubagazor. What a name. But it is a 7 mana 5/5 dragon that says, for the rest of the game, after you cast a nature spell, summon a 3/3 whelp with rush. So even if you kill the 5/5 dragon, whenever you cast a nature spell, you get a 3/3 whelp with rush. You know what that sounds really good with? It sounds really good with stuff like Gloop and Alignment and making infinite mana and doing some... Yeah. Sounds like all the stuff that Druid's already really, really good at. Topiary helps with that in Wild. The issue just becomes, do you have the card slots? Druid has like 50 really, really insane cards. Does this make the cut? Is kind of the big question.
I mean, I've been seeing some Goldshire Knolls in like a Tog version of that. This kind of does something similar and maybe is worth a look. But you do have to be careful because you might run out of board space at a certain point. I think it's a strong card, but like you said, like Druid just has so many other important or like powerful things that it can do. It's just like one of many. So at a certain point, like, it just doesn't matter what the powerful thing is that it's doing. It's already doing the powerful thing, oftentimes with alignment, and it's like Guff enabling other things. So I don't know. I'm happy this is on a battle cry at least, so that you have to play from hand. But I don't know. I like the card. I don't think it matters whether or not it's playable because I don't think it moves the needle very much. And I'm just grateful to see another strong bad reference in Hearthstone. So I'm into it. It's a cool card.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, it's probably really good in Dragon Druid. It probably makes the cut in there. Like the Kazakhstan style decks.
Yeah, like that. It's probably maybe even best in that type of deck, but like that type of deck is kind of fallen out of favor. In part though, because it didn't have enough high quality dragons that made it worth running. This fixes that. It's a 7-drop, so it's good off of Juicy Psychomon. You go 7/8, Ysera or Malygos on 9, Onyxia on 10. There's your dragons. Like, so I think that is probably where you want to look at it.
Yep. All right, Dragon Druid support piece here. And then the other legendary minion. This is the Death Rattle support piece that we've been asking for in Druid. It's an 8-mana 8/8 with Taunt with Death Rattle. Draw a minion. Reduce its cost by 8. Even with Death Rattle support, I don't know what we want to do. This seems very much like, so in Standard we have the 7-mana 4/4 that discounted a random minion in your hand by 7. And this very much feels like this is the combo Druid enabler in Standard, where you use this to draw Anacondra or something like that and kind of go from there. In Wild, this just does not seem like it's anywhere near the power level needed in a class that already has, like we mentioned, like 50 playable cards. So
yeah, 8 mana is nothing for Druid. Mana is just merely a social construct for Druid. It ignores it completely. And this is also on a Death Rattle, so if you're not playing it with a Hedge Maze, if you're not triggering it immediately,
yikes.
Like, that, it's not going to be in a situation where it like gets value. So the one thing that it might, like, that gives me a little bit of hope with it is like you're running this card in a deck with Oaken Summons, right? Oaken Summons is strong. You're already thinning your weak minions out of this, so you can get things reliably with it. So, you know, it is pretty good in a Hadronox Druid. It gives you like a 2-mana N'Zoth maybe, but like Hadronox Druid itself isn't very good, and that's the bigger problem.
I think I would rather just have this other spell here. I mean, Nightshade Blood just seems like it does that better. So Nightshade Blood is an 8-mana nature spell that says choose one, discover a minion from your deck to summon, or a spell to cast. And so you can just use this to pull the Anacondra out of your deck, the Hadronox out of your deck, potentially. And so,
yeah. But I mean, you could also just pull the Cecily out of your deck as well. So, like, you know, it fits in a very similar type of deck where you've got like those big beefy things that you're looking to summon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know about beefy, but like just like in an alignment Druid, and you're running Oaken Summons, and then you run Anacondra and one Tog, and you just use this to consistently pull the Anacondra out of your deck post alignment. I know you're giving me the look. I have the same look. I hate alignment Druid, but this just kind of seems like it's very consistent for that deck.
Yeah, it's also a nature spell, so like if you already have the Anacondra, you just like cast a spell from your deck to further empty your deck, so it's free. It's a 3rd and 4th copy of alignment sometimes. Like, yeah, that card is real scary in alignment Druid.
Yeah, just what alignment Druid needed. More buffs. Ooh. All right, we got Planted Evidence. There's a 1-mana nature spell that says discover a spell. It cost 2 less this turn. This feels like a slightly worse Nature Studies to me, because especially since the discount doesn't carry over. And and Nature Studies doesn't really see a whole lot of play here. It's very fringe. I know it sees play in like the 40 card decks, and so this is being worse than Nature Studies probably means it doesn't have a whole lot of hope to see play.
No. And yeah, like again, it runs into the issue of deep card pool, less reliable options. Like there are a lot of good druid spells, but there are a lot of really bad ones too. So like you could whiff pretty miserably off of this.
Yep. All right. Plot of Sin, 3-mana nature spell. Summon 2/2/2 treants. So very much, we've seen this card. A card that literally says, yeah, landscaping. 3-mana summon 2/2/2 treants. This one, power crept landscaping, because it has the infuse mechanic. Infuse 5, summon 2/5/5 ancients instead. So obviously with the 2-mana deal 2 summon a 2/2 treant, maybe we're getting some sweet treant synergy support here as well. Kind of weird to see treants in Castle Nathria, but not going to complain. Treant Druid's one of those has a soft spot for me, and so anytime we get support, excited to see if it maybe moves the needle on Treant Druid in Wild. And
I mean, castles have gardens. Like that's why there's a hedge maze. Like it makes sense that there's treants here.
True. Okay.
I think that to your point though, what the deck is missing is like a bigger payoff than what it currently has, and this is like a better version of landscaping, but I don't know that it's still the payoff that the deck needs in order to get there. So it needs something more.
Yeah, we do still have a couple of Druid cards left, so maybe that payoff is coming in those last two. And last but not least for Druid, we've got some Yogg Druid support, baby. Convoke the Spirits, 10-mana nature spell that says cast 8 random Druid spells. Targets chosen randomly. So Yogg Druid absolutely loves this. Roffle, take it away, bud.
The perfect card. You need nothing more than this card and Guff and a couple of Yoggs on your deck, and you're ready for some fun. You've also got some more reliability off of the Nightshade Blood. You can maybe sometimes hit this instead of an alignment if you're an insane person, which I tend to be. So, yeah, it's a bad card, but I'm all for it. Like it's going to be a good time. And I mean, in Druid, you can also like Solar Eclipse it so that you get 16.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, this has already been nerfed. This was revealed as 10, and they already nerfed it to 8, just because of people like you, Ruffle. Just because.
I mean, I know why they did it, because they don't want another like Yogg situation.
Mm-hmm.
They already kind of have that going on in Mage right now in Standard, but like this is just worse than Yogg most of the time, because like the narrowing of spells, like you're gonna end up with a lot of like oofs, I think. So I don't think it's good, but it's not meant to be. So just let me have this card now, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, you're probably going to draw a lot of cards with this, because a lot of Druid cards draw you cards. So you're probably consistently going to be drawn off of that. All right, last but not least, we got Priest. Looks like we're getting some Thief Priest and some Inner Fire Priest support here. Let's start with Pelagos. So Pelagos, probably the Priest card that's got the most people excited or scared. It's a 3-mana 1/6 legendary that says after you cast a spell on a friendly minion, set its attack and health to the higher of the two. So basically, every time you cast a spell on a friendly minion, you get a Bless-esque effect or an Inner Fire-esque effect. And so all I gotta say is thank God Drekthar was nerfed. Because like what you can do is you just go like Pelagos and Inner Fire this card, or not Inner Fire, Power Word Shield this card, and all of a sudden you have a 3-mana 8/8, 4-mana 8/8 that has drawn you a card. Seems busted with stuff like Crab Rider, Death Lord, all the things that Inner Fire Priest wants to be doing. Seems like a perfect fit in that style of deck. I will say the one thing that I'm happy to see about this is that it's going to encourage the minion Inner Fire Priest rather than the like spell combo, do nothing for 6 turns and then steal your minion and kill you with it, Inner Fire Priest, which I think I like a lot more. It's a lot more enjoyable to play against, even if it's more busted, like as the minion Inner Fire compared to the spell. But that's being said, seems really, really good in Inner Fire Priest.
Yeah, I think it makes the deck easier to play too, because you have a lot more redundancy in your Inner Fire Bless options, so you can just play it more as like a tempo deck rather than a combo deck, right? You've got all those minions, you just plop them out, start buffing them, and then like you're less hesitant to give up resources, I think, in that style of deck because of Pelagos. So yeah, the good card, like you, my first thought was, oh my god, thank you that Drekthar was nerfed, because that would have been terrorizing.
Yeah. All right. The other support piece here for Inner Fire Priest, at least it seems like it on the surface, is Boon of the Ascended. This is a 4-mana holy spell. Give a minion +2 health. Summon a Kyrian with its stats and taunt. So let's say you go Pelagos on 3, turn 4 you cast Boon of the Ascended on Pelagos. Pelagos becomes an 8/8, and then you summon an 8/8 with taunt. It seems like it's just way too situational and expensive for Wild Inner Fire Priest, whether you're playing the minion or the spell-based version of the deck.
I think if you don't have Pelagos on the board, this card is absolute trash, and most of the time, because there's only one Pelagos in your deck, you're not going to have them in your deck. Maybe something worth keeping an eye on just for like discovers off of palm reading and that type of thing.
Sure.
So like it's another non-whiff, I guess, is where it stands out. But it is it isn't probably a card that you want to run like in your 30.
Yep. All right. The Harvester of Envy. This is the other Priest Legendary card here. It's a 3-mana 4/3. After you play a card copied from the opponent, steal the original. This seems like a card very up Roffle's alley. So if you do something like Thought Steal or Archbishop Benedictus, you copy that. Even stuff like Seance works, because if you Seance something and then you play the minion, then you steal the minion that's on the opponent's side of the board, because that is strangely how that works. For what it's worth, it does not seem very strong because it's very slow. Harvester has to be on the board, but seems like a very fun card, and very much kind of what Thief Priest wants to be doing, which is doing a lot of stealing, doing a lot of, like you're doing even more stealing when you steal from the opponent, and it seems like a lot of fun to play, even if it's not the most competitive.
Yeah, realistically, the only chance Thief Priest has in any matchup is against slow, like grindy matchups, and this allows you to kind of have a mini ticketus type thing where like that effect is actually a little bit relevant in those type of situations where it's a resource battle, right? The problem is we just don't have many resource battles in Wild Hearthstone anymore. So like unless you're just playing this in casual or for funsies, like it's not going to be a strong effect. But it's a really cool card, and I really like it because I like disrupting my opponent's stuff. I like making them not be able to do the things that they built their deck around because I'm an evil person. There's even the potential for like mind vision into somebody's quest, and you can actually disrupt their quest or quest line with this if you're able to get it down in time before they complete it, because you would attempt to steal the quest, but since you already have that in play, it would just destroy it. So like it is actually the first time we have quest hate in our format, but like it's not at all reliable, and it's like,
well, that the Harvester has to be on the board, right? So you're like stealing quest rewards,
exactly.
not the quest itself.
So
Yeah.
no, you just hold the quest until you have the Harvester. If the opponent hasn't completed it yet, then you play the Harvester and the quest.
Is that how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. So you go turn 1 Mind Visions. And then,
Right. Yeah, you still have to get really lucky.
I see.
But like there is the chance that you could destroy a quest.
That's the YouTube highlight waiting to happen right there.
Yeah, I could see that consuming hours upon hours of my time trying to make it happen once.
Just don't do it on day 1. You'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last but not least for Priest here, we have Clean the Scene. It's a 5-mana holy spell that says destroy all minions with 3 or less attack. Infuse 3. Destroy all minions with 6 or less attack. I don't know how the heck you're infusing in a control priest that wants to be running Clean the Scene. That being said, we also just have like Mass Hysteria and a bunch of other really, really good priest board clears that Clean the Scene doesn't really feel like it makes the cut.
Yeah, but no. You want your board clears to be like top deckable too, yeah. Or found off a Shadow Essence or Shadow Visions Thrive. Like you don't want a build up for them.
All right. Last but not least, we're moving into some neutral cards here. Let's start with kind of just the pack fillers, the arena cards. So Insatiable Devour. It's a 9-mana 4/4 that says Battlecry. Just devour an enemy minion and gain its stats. Infuse 5. Devour an enemy minion and its neighbors and gain its stats. Seems kind of busted in arena. It seems just much worse than Abominable Lieutenant in Wild, and that card doesn't even see any play.
Yeah.
Then we have Red Herring. This is a 7-mana 3/12 beast with taunt. Your non-red herring minions have stealth. What a great play on words and the mechanic. Pretty sweet. Card's not good. Sinful the Golem. This is a 7-mana 2/2. Can't believe I just said those words. Infuse 3. Gain stats equal to the attack of the minions that infuse this. Again, this seems like a really great arena card. Card that you're probably not going to ever want to see played against you in arena. Does not seem like a very viable constructed card.
I think the reason they seem like arena cards is they are part of the arena card reveals. So
there you go. That makes sense. And then Maze Guide, 2-mana 1/1, summon a random 2-cost minion. Bog Beast. Bog Beast is a 6-mana 3/6 with taunt. Death Rattle, summon a 2/4 Muckmare with taunt. Very reminiscent of Sludge Belcher. Then you have Sin Runner. This is a 5-mana 6/5 beast. Death Rattle, destroy a random enemy minion. All right, those are kind of the arena-esque cards. None of those remotely close to being playable in Wild. So let's head back over here to Demolition Renovator. This is a 4-mana 4/4 battle cry. Destroy an enemy location. So I'm not even sure that any of these locations that we've seen are Wild playable, but just in case they are oppressive, we have built-in hate into the expansion. This is also probably just a check. Might as well print it now, because if they do print locations in future sets, you do have the hate piece if needed. Like we mentioned, though, I don't think any of the locations are extremely playable, so I'd be very surprised if this saw play.
Not initially. I think this is so. They've already indicated that they plan to release more locations in the future, and that they will be more commonplace than hero cards even. So, this is just a long-term check on, location cards getting out of hand. But again, it's so narrow that like an Eater of Secrets, like a Kazan Mystic, like those types of very specific tech cards, it's probably never going to see much play, even if locations get strong, because I don't see locations getting as strong as some of the other mechanics that are worth teching against necessarily. But it's a preemptive tech against those types of things, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about Dispossessed Soul. This is a kind of a reason and incentive to play locations. 4-mana 4/5 battle cry. If you control a location, discover a copy of a card in your deck. So just remember, outside of Demolition Renovator, they can't really interact with the location. So if you play it out, then you get to kind of play this 4-mana 4/5 that discovers a copy of a card in your deck. You're not limited to just spells, not limited to just minions. It's any card, which may make it worse, I guess, if you can't just narrowly discover a certain type of card. But 4-mana 4/5, discover a copy, doesn't seem terrible. It's just, like, locations themselves aren't super exciting, right? So I don't know if this will see play.
Yeah, conditional cards like this have historically not been the strongest. It's like it's kind of like the questing Explorer, but coming out a lot slower and a lot less reliable, because you're like on turn 2 always going to have a quest if you're running a quest in your deck. So like questing Explorer is just a better version of this. So I'd be surprised if this saw play, even if locations were really powerful.
Yep, that's fair. All right, next up we've got Forensic Duster. This is a card I'm actually pretty excited about. I think this card's really, really strong. So it's a 3-mana 3/4 battle cry. Your opponent's minions cost 1 more next turn. So we have a card called Cult Neophyte that does that for spells. So this is Minion Cult Neophyte. This goes very well in my favorite deck at the moment, Free Shaman, especially because you get to play stuff like Bolner and Macaws, and it does the Cult Neophyte Lothar thing of helping lock your opponents out of playing cards, which is what that deck aims to do. I don't know if this really sees a whole lot of play outside of that. Like, I don't know, just generally, like, Cult Neophyte ended up being just a general good tech card against combo decks. I don't know, do you think this is maybe just viable enough of a tech card against something like Like it hits stuff like Free Shaman, it hits stuff like Pirate Rogue. It honestly, like, it's pretty good against something like Pillager Rogue, where Cult Neophyte doesn't really disrupt anything. So kind of just in general, I think this card is kind of busted in the format.
I don't know about busted, but it's like definitely worth a look. Like it's not quite a Lothab, but it's probably better than Neophyte just because like even with how little the board matters, like minions still matter in Hearthstone, and they're like a pretty core component of it. Like there are very few decks that like don't need to play minions at some point, and so like delaying that or offsetting that or disrupting that can make a difference. We saw Cult Neophyte pop up in quite a lot of even decks. You can see the same thing for this with odd decks. So I think it's probably on par, if not maybe a slightly better than a Cult Neophyte, just because we don't have like a Lothab as a alternative to that, or a stronger alternative to that. So I think it's definitely got the potential to see some play in our format, depending on like what decks are popular at the time. And it's a good proactive check against Pillager Rogue as well, right? Like we've talked in the past how like Pillager Rogue is one of those decks where like it doesn't need that much to be a real nuisance on like some of the other decks that we've seen get nerfed in the past. So this can help give an answer to that if that ever becomes the case, while we're waiting for maybe some intervention from the development team. So yeah.
All right, so keep an eye out on Forensic Duster moving forward. Maybe up there for one of the more impactful cards from the set, just this innocuous neutral 3-mana 3/4. Next up, we have Sketchy Stranger. This is a 2-mana 2/2 battle cry. Discover a secret from another class. So even if you play this in a class that doesn't run any secrets, you get the opportunity to discover a hunter, rogue, or mage, or what other class has secrets? Hunter, mage, paladin. You never want to discover a paladin, unfortunately. But
Oh my god.
That's fair. But yeah, okay, sure. Oh my Yogg plus all the other spells. I wonder. The only reason I wanted to bring this up is not an arena card, because it feels like maybe just in Secret Rogue itself, because if you don't have a high enough density of minions or of good quality secrets, do you think that this is worth running as a 2-mana 2/2 discover a playable secret?
Yeah, I mean, get a nice block once and it like it makes it completely. Yeah, I think it's not a great card, but like it might find a home in just some of those types of decks. Could also, even just in like 40 card Reno decks in classes that don't have access to secrets, could give you some extra consideration. Like the fact that there's no conditional nature to this means that it's always got some possibility of seeing play. But again, wide card pool and wild, you can't reliably get something that you want, but you can get access to cards you shouldn't have. So maybe. But yeah, I was eyeing it in like Secret Rogue as well. So maybe.
Yep. All right. Next up, we've got Famished Fool. This is a 5-mana 3/5 battle cry. Draw a card. Infuse 4. Draw 3 instead. So in the token style decks, like maybe an Imp Warlock or Skeleton Mage or other examples that I can't think of right now, 5-mana 3/5, draw 3 cards. It very much feels like a multicaster style card to me, where like you have to do a little bit of work, and then if you do the work, you're drawing 3 cards and doing that. The issue is like you can cast the spells, then top deck the multicaster and draw 3. Can't do that with Famished Fool, unfortunately. So while it feels like it has potential, I don't think it's going to be consistent enough in Wild to draw you 3 cards.
No, if you're that desperate to draw 3 cards in Wild, you'd probably just shift towards like I think most classes can get something off of most classes that need that card draw can get something off of a multicaster already. So yeah, I think that like the infuse I think the combination of the infuse mechanic and the mana cost are going to make it a little bit limiting in terms of its playability.
Yep. All right. Let's go to Kael'thas Sinstrider. Kael'thas is back. 6 mana 4/7. Every third minion you play each turn cost 0. So same text box as OG Kael'thas, except minions instead of spells. I will go ahead and say this effect being tied to minions is much, much, much worse than being tied to spells. for the primary reason of you have this thing called board space, so you cannot basically go infinite. That being said, things costing 0 is always going to be an extremely powerful thing. I have yet to see kind of this take where it seems like it breaks the format, where you like play Kael'thas and you're cheating out like a 10 drop or a Neptulon. That's kind of like the big thing that I've seen, but also just like consistent mana cheat is always going to be powerful. I just don't really know where this is finding a home just yet.
Yeah. So if you ignore the fact that like it's inherently a 3-card combo just to get a big thing down, right? You need to draw Kael'thas 0 mana minion plus like your Neptulon. So that's a 3-card combo that happens on turn 6, turn 5 if you have the coin. Like is that a strong play in Wild? Like Priest gets turn 3 Neptulon and then can bring it back over and over again. Like like that's not format warping in any capacity. Like you said, board space is limiting, so you can get this off twice in a turn maximum, unless you can kill your stuff. What can you do with 2 big minions in Wild, right? Like they're not going to end the game unless you have ways to clear off your minions. You're not going to end the game. Then this is all tied around the fact that like there are very few decks. There are a lot of decks that run low cost spells and high cost spells, and those interact well together. There are very few decks that have ever existed that run low cost minions and high cost minions such that you can like get game breaking effects off of this. So like I don't see it. I think people are dramatically overreacting to this card. If nothing else, like you said, because of the board space, because the thing about Kael'thas was you got 3, 4, 5 hits off of Kael'thas. You got deck emptying amounts of effects off on a single turn. You're limited just on the board to 2, right? Like, and so maybe you could do some rush things to kill off your low cost minions, but like you don't have any low cost minions or 0 cost minions with rush, thank God. So like those aren't dying. The Sonya Null thing, that's 2 board slots and a 9 mana combo in Wild. I saw some concern about Bran. Okay, well that's again 2 card slots or 2 board slots. That means that you can only then play 1 big minion, right? Because like I guess you could theoretically play 3.
And then you do like 2 more 0
4,
costs.
and then you'd still get 2 big minions off with your Bran. So 2 Battlecry minions, is that worth like at that point it's like a 7-card combo in your hand. Is that really so it's just like there are a lot of things that I think are making Kael'thas a lot less risky on minions than he was on spells. So yeah, I don't see it. I don't even know that this is a playable card in our format at all, let alone a game breaking one. So could be wrong. You can laugh at me if I am, but like
we will. Don't worry.
If we're waiting until turn 6 to do something strong and Wild, like and it requires a 3-card combo, like that needs to end the game. And so I don't know what is ending the game that way.
Yeah, I mean that statement you just made, that's I think the only place that this is going to see play is if there's a combo deck that's born because of him. I am not smart enough to figure out if there is a combo or what that combo is. I mean, I could totally see something potentially in Druid just because you have 20 mana and infinite card draw already. But like I don't know how that's better than all the other stuff you're doing in Druid already. Or
you already
even
have
maybe something in Rogue with Shadow Steps and Foxies and stuff like that. But like with Scabs potentially.
Right, but then is that better than what Pillager is already doing?
Exactly.
I guess is my question. Like, so
I am not smart enough to figure out if there is a better combo than what we're already doing.
It's entirely possible that we're just completely missing something because like you said, like the Shadow Steps, even some removal spells can offset the board space as a limiting factor because like your 0 mana minions are going to be easy to remove if you want to murder some Tiny Fins, but like you still then run the issue of you need to be able to draw, and minions are worse at drawing than spells are. So like again, I don't know. There's a reason why I think this is a safer alternative to what Kael'thas was, and where there are a great many reasons. I understand why people are reacting so viscerally because we just recently got burned by Kael'thas again. So I do understand it, but I think that maybe it's a little bit unwarranted, and like even more so than the Warlock card that we saw already. So give it some time, and if some brainiac is able to come up with a combo that we're missing, certainly let us know. But I feel like we would have seen every example that I've seen. I've just been like,
This is
so
worse
what?
than everything else we're doing.
Yeah, like so what? Like it's either coming out too late or not doing enough. So normally at this time with a card like this, immediately somebody gets it. The amount of people that are really engaged with Hearthstone, um, there's a lot of eyeballs on this, and certainly more so than on the dev team. Somebody certainly would have come up with something by now, right? Like we saw it with a Wretched Tiller in that combo. As soon as Hysteria was released, bam, Tiller combos were coming up. Same thing with Switcheroo. Like historically, when we've seen a broken card, it's the community sees it immediately, and nobody's really presented anything that suggests that this is a broken card to me.
Yep. All right, we'll see if you eat those words. I guess I completely agree with you. So we'll see if we eat those words, and this card ends up being broken. I could just see it being powerful card in standard just because mana cheat is already so limited in that format. But in our format, it's not limited. Doesn't seem like it's doing anything more busted than everything else going on. All right, we've got 2 cards left. Let's start with Ashen Elemental. This was Corb's card reveal. He's not here, but if you guys haven't seen his card reveal video, make sure you guys check it out. Support him and the card reveal. But Ashen Elemental, it's sweet that he gave him this card because I feel like this is a very playable card in Wild, a very relevant card in Wild, and maybe not so much in Standard. So kind of poetic that he got it. But it's a 3-mana 2/4 Elemental that says Battlecry. Whenever your opponent draws a card next turn, they take 2 damage. So a couple things to note here. It's an Elemental for Elemental synergies, specifically Dungeoneer in Shaman. And it says when your opponent draws a card next turn, they take 2. So this is on their turn, so it bypasses things like Ice Block. So basically what this is a very soft Time Walk, very, very soft Time Warp, Loatheb effect on combo decks potentially. So if you can time this well against something like Quest Mage, or time this well against something like Alignment Druid, maybe they don't get to combo, because normally when they're comboing, they're drawing 10, 15 cards and doing a huge pop-off. If they can't afford to take all the damage, you get another turn, right? And that could mean all the difference against these combo decks. I guess my question is, do you think that this sees a play outside of something like Shaman in more aggressive strategies? Like baseline, it's a 3-mana 2/4 deal 2, right? At the very minimum.
Yeah. I mean, there's potential for it. Like, I think that really what this reveals to me is that like there wasn't a reason before. You have absolutely no reason to add Eater of Secrets Kazan Mystic to your deck anymore. Like,
especially to your Shaman decks.
But like in legitimately any deck, because like this is even in an aggressive deck, like this is just much better at answering those types of cards because it does something even if they don't have an ice block up or something along those, because like the 2 damages maybe not great, but it's like at least in line with what your deck is already doing. So it's not just an understated minion, it's an understated minion that deals damage to your opponent's face, so it offsets some of that. I think it's unlikely that it sees play outside of Shudderwalk Shaman unless Quest Mage becomes a lot more prevalent and popular, because like it is a card that you can just slide in to begin answering Quest Mage a little bit more with a lot less downside than than the secret hate that we have available to us. Yeah, I think it's a decent quality card, and I think it's cool that Corb got this one, because like I think if it is going to see play, it's likely going to be in Wild because of that threat of Ice Block, and just like you said, Alignment Druid too. It really stops, like it denies their combo turn almost completely. They can't tog you if you play this card, and so sometimes that additional turn, especially especially if they don't have like the alignment same turn pop off. If they play the alignment, you have this in hand, you just jam it and then hope they have like branching paths to, buy themselves another turn in response. So yeah, cool card. I like the I don't know. It seems like a creative way to answer combo decks without, I don't know, without falling into the same trap of most tech cards where it only does one thing. This does one thing really well, but it also does like just vanilla things okay, right?
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of sweet disruption this set, like including our very last card here to talk about, Theotar the Mad Duke. Guys, this is a card. It's a 4-mana 3/3 legendary battle cry. Discover a card in each player's hand and swap them. So you literally will yoink a card from your opponent's hand, and you can give them, like, you get to discover what you give them. So you can give them something really, really crappy. I can already see the instances of you play this in Shudderwock Shaman against a Shudderwock Shaman, or you just play this against a Shudderwock Shaman. You steal their Shudderwock, and then you play Shudderwock, and then this battle cry goes off again, and shenanigans ensue. I don't know if this card's going to be good. I don't know if it's very reliable disruption, but it's going to cause some shenanigans, and that's pretty great.
The thing that it does do is it gives slow decks finally like a semblance of an answer against like a Shudderwock Shaman, any deck with a minion or single card based inevitability. So like it helps Reno decks fight back against parrots, against Shudderwocks, like in addition to Dirty Rat already. So I don't know that you necessarily want to run it in Shudderwock Shaman itself, because then you run the risk of giving your opponent your Shudderwocks, which you kind of want and need in order to, win the game. So they like, I don't know that that's the place for it. That's where I'm going with it. I'm just going to do a pure like swap and trade chaos Shudderwock Shaman, because I love that deck, and this card is already one of my favorites of the new set just because of the chaotic evil tendencies I have already when it comes to card games in particular. I guess one question I have is, what happens if your hand is empty? Like,
I guess you just steal and don't give them anything. That's what I would assume is the case,
right? So I don't know. I think its intention though is to like swap curses back to your opponent's hand. Like that's one thing. So if Curse Warlock does continue making its way into Wild, like that's a fun way to do it as well. But I think it's just a really fun, interesting card. Like it's like another Dirty Rat, right? Like, but it can hit spells as well. Like you can hit an alignment from your opponent so that they cannot play it, and that makes a big deal again in those value-based decks like Reno decks that maybe don't have an answer to, or don't have reliable answers to those single card win conditions. It helps.
Yep. I do not know if it'll be competitive, but I do know that it'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, that is 60 something cards. That very long episode today, but this was the bulk of the expansion, right? And so this expansion looks really sweet. I know next week we'll be doing our predictions. I will go ahead and sell out for the both of us here. Theory crafting stream on Thursday, July 21st. So if you guys want to check out some of the cards in action in Wild beforehand, there'll be a ton of Wild streamers, including Roffle and I, streaming from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific. So do that time conversion wherever you guys are. But check out a lot of these sweet cards. We still have more cards to talk about next week as well. There's like another 30 or 40 cards left. So we'll be talking about those, making our predictions next week. So yeah, I know, kind of doing the wrap up here a little bit fast because we've been going forever. It's been a very long episode, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys appreciate the thoughts and our reactions to some of these cards. And Roffle, thanks again for joining me. Hopefully you're finding this expansion as sweet as I am.
Yeah, I mean, I love disruption when it's of the quality that it appears to be in this expansion, where it's not like super game breaking. I know it's probably going to upset a lot of people, but like it's also in line with the theme of the expansion, right? Treacherous, murderous folks. Like, I mean, we are in I think Warcraft Hell, right? Like, so it makes sense that these types of things would be popping up in this expansion. It's really thematic. I remain as excited as I was when it was released. Like, I think this has the capacity to be one of my favorite expansions in Hearthstone ever. Even
Big talk.
even if like it isn't super high in terms of power level just yet. I don't know that it's going to be like a I don't know, like a United and Stormwind's Goleman's Academy power level wise, but I think that's a good thing as well. Like I would like we don't need again giant leaps forward in terms of strength, especially in Wild where things are already very strong and very fast. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, the lot of sweet looking cards, a lot of sweet disruption tools potentially, and just kind of some buffs to some severely underplayed archetypes as well, which is always a good thing in Wild. But yeah, looking forward to the rest of the card reveals. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you much for listening all the way to the end. I know today was a long episode. Appreciate you guys sticking with us, and we will see you guys again next week. Take care.